Welcome back, everybody. The other day, I was scrolling through my social media feed. Yes, on vacation. I was checking the news, and I caught a story that highlighted the rise in murders during the pandemic, but a sharp decline when compared to just last year alone. And now, according to the FBI, the country is on track for a record drop in homicides, but smash and grab criminal activity, carjackings, among other crimes, have increased, especially in major cities. So joining us to talk about the uptick in crime, destructive woke policy, and much more is none other than retired Milwaukee County Sheriff and the host of Straight Talk with America's Sheriff David Clarke. He's David Clarke. Sheriff, welcome to the show. Happy New Year to you, sir.
It's my pleasure. Happy New Year to you.
Sir, I want to ask you about the dynamic of these numbers, because notwithstanding the murder numbers going down, Americans are still seeing an absolute explosion in crimes like smash and grab. I'm here in Los Angeles. It seems like every day there's another shopping center that is a victim of these types of crimes. This is an election year. We've got elections coming up in 10 months. Are Democrats specifically going to pay a price for these destructive policies in blue cities that is causing crime to explode?
Well, let's hope this time that the message actually sets in at voting time. It didn't so much at the midterms on crime and violence, but it's starting to affect more and more people outside of your traditional areas where crime, violence, and disorder occurs, like, your poverty-stricken areas, low income, that sort of thing. It's now happening in suburbia all across America. But, I want to make it clear that strictly looking at this from a statistical, and I don't mean you, I'm talking about the FBI, from a statistical standpoint, I think it's a big swing and a miss. It misses the point. There's too much crime in these cities, in these suburbs. I don't know what their benchmark is. If they think there's going to be record lows in terms of homicides coming up, what's their benchmark? Because for me, my standard is zero. I want zero homicides. Now, some people might say, well, that's not realistic. I don't care. I don't look at the fact that there was a minuscule drop in homicides in 2023 to be taking a victory lap over or to be holding a parade for.
Yeah, so true. So true. Sheriff, you have been a champion of the Second Amendment. I was looking at the flags behind you. You've got the thin blue line flag behind you, and you've got the Israeli flag behind you. Most of the great law enforcement people I've known, including in my own family, my dad and brother were cops, say, lawful gun owners are such a great deterrent for crime. Israel went through this heinous attack. They're now helping to arm their citizens better. The Second Amendment seems to be part of the solution, though Democrats resist it every step of the way. How important is lawful gun ownership to stemming the rise of violence that we're seeing in our city, particularly in our country cities?
I think it's very important. It's something that I've pushed continually with the residents of Milwaukee County when I was the sheriff, because the citizens play a role in their protection and in their safety. And I used to remind them of that. I used to run ads saying, you play a role. You can no longer stand on the sidelines. To take safety courses, consider arming yourselves, and be able to protect yourselves in cases where 911 is not going to do you any good. There's an old saying in policing that when cops are needed seconds away, they're probably minutes away. And so there's a role to play for the citizenry, but they have to be prepared and they have to be able to fend off these attacks. Oftentimes, especially carjackings, they're up all across the country. The suspect is armed. So unless you have the means with which to counter this stuff, you're kind of a sitting duck.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. Sheriff, when you consider nations' capitals globally, they are known for a lot of things. Sometimes it's something pertaining to their architecture or a cathedral or even cuisine. Our nation's capital now has a new thing that it's known for, and that would be crime. 274 murders in the year 2003. That was a 35% increase from the year before. Of course, carjackings and other violent crime, even members of Congress who were victims of those crimes. It's incredible to see. I don't think it's a good look for our country, though.
It's staggering, these figures, especially in an industrialized nation like we are here in the United States, to see these kind of figures. But it's been, in part, you mentioned it at the beginning, poor public policy on the part of these Democrat mayors. Things like no bail, things like watering down certain crimes, not considering them crimes anymore. You have a turnstile, catch and release policies that go on. They won't hold anybody in jail. Even when a person is caught as a repeat offender, they're back out on the street. Those policies are hurting the efforts of the police to keep crime and violence in check. And you add to that the fact that police are not as assertive as they used to be and as they need to be to take on violence. because of this war on cops, because of these vast resignations and retirements. They can't keep up with the hiring. They can't find people, quality people. You don't want to lower the standards. They can't find quality people to take this job anymore. And so we're always going to be on defense. And that's why we just talked about the fact that the citizens are going to have to play a more proactive role in protecting themselves.
Yeah, that's very true. Sir, a lot of my family lived in Milwaukee when you were the county sheriff, and I think they really appreciated something that you took. You really took a holistic approach to crime. You understood that crime was part of a larger urban environment and that you wouldn't have stores, you wouldn't have community services if people are afraid to go out or open up that store or go to the store at night. All these box stores and all of these pharmacies are moving out of the inner cities where the crime is rampant under blue mayors. Are the economic forces starting to wake up people? They realize that I have to go 20 miles to get to a store now because no one will come into my community. How important is the economic changes that crime is occurring right now?
Well, yeah, these businesses have an obligation to protect their employees. They have an obligation to protect their customers. I'm not going to frequent a store that I know has had several carjackings or several armed robberies. I'm not going there. And if they can't operate profitably, businesses, they got to close up the doors and they have to move out. So again, and they're paying the highest amount of property taxes in these areas. It's not the residential property taxes, it's the business property taxes. And they don't ask for much. They just ask for a decent area that they can operate profitably. And that's all they really ask from a city or a county or a state. And they're not getting it right now. So why bother? Why continue to pay those high property taxes if the government is not going to do everything they can within their power and their authority to keep the environment safe? It's affecting the quality of life of a community.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sheriff, I want to press in on John's premise because it seems like practically every day there is a new viral video of a mom or a grandmom whose son or daughter or grandson or granddaughter was the victim of a drive-by shooting or some violent crime in a blue city or blue state. And you see these folks going on local news, delivering scathing criticism to their Democrat city mayors or their Democrat state governors. Does that shift the voting blocks enough to actually tangibly impact elections in November?
Well, it's very hard in these blue states because the greater part of the population continues to vote Democrat no matter what. But here's the thing. We just the other day we had, on New Year's Eve, as a matter of fact, errant bullet flies through a house from the outside into the bedroom where a 3-year-old was sleeping. Now, it didn't strike the kid, but this kind of stuff goes on and on and on. When I say it affects the quality of life, there are moms and families in these poor areas, poverty-stricken areas, that have to have their kids sleep in a bathtub for protection against these drive-by shootings, these gang wars that go on, and they end up shooting up houses that have nothing to do with it. So, you would ask, don't these mayors care? Don't these governors care? They only care about one thing, and that's at voting time, that these people get out there and continue to keep them in office, and they continue to win. So, there's really no motivation for these liberal mayors, progressive mayors, to really get tough on crime. But at some point, there's got to be a tipping point, and that's why I'm hoping 2024 might be that tipping point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of Americans are. So I want to ask just quickly about the open border. I mean, we know about all the terrorism threats. We know about that. But one of the truisms of an open border, an insecure border, is that just old-fashioned crime goes up. The gangs get more resources. They get more drugs. They get more guns. How bad is the urban crime problem as it relates to the resources coming across the border right now?
Yeah, it's no longer just a border issue. They're infiltrating throughout the United States. And it's having a severe effect. You got people coming in with questionable past. They're not being properly screened. I've been to the border 3 times, 3 different sectors. I've seen it. I've gotten briefings from the Border Patrol commanders as to what's going on down there. It's a crisis at our southern border. You mentioned the fentanyl coming in, the other drugs, illegal drugs. Here's the statistic. In 2019 or 2021 and 2022, 160,000 fentanyl deaths in the United States, overdose. In the last 3 wars, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and what's the third one?
Korea.
I can't remember what it is
Korea,
off the top of my head, but 61,000 soldiers were killed in 3 wars. Okay, Iraq's the other one, sorry. So Iraq, Afghanistan, 3
Vietnam.
almost three times as many soldiers were killed in wars. I'm sorry, fentanyl deaths than were killed in wars, soldiers killed in wars. To show you staggering statistics that are happening. And again, that's a federal issue. The state plays a role down at the border.
Right. Yep.
I've talked to some of these governors. I've talked to residents. Again, you can't get these people to move. This is a political football right now. Both sides
It
are
is,
trying.
and Democrats have got to get on board to talk about it too. Sheriff David Clarke, we love having you on. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to have you back on again very soon. We're going to have to take a quick commercial break, but we'll be right back.
Let's make them wonder. Let's squeeze them for a change instead of them constantly squeezing us. And then, finally, we rally around President Trump. We surround him with support.